Nano Machine. By Hanjung Weolya. Chapter 29, Secret Books of the Academy Library, Part 1. Submang's blade skill mesmerized people who saw the traces that it left. Dai. Chun Wonryu's attack lost its unique smooth flow due to her anger and brute force. Yoan's sword crashed into her attack and shot past her cheek and arm. The last attack move isn't complete because it's not a blade. He had to use a blade for it to work, but this was only a training sword, so he couldn't use the skill perfectly. However, it was perfect until then. Something dropped to the ground. Blood began to pour out from the cut area, and Chun Wonryu's face turned pale as her eyes trembled. Kaiyawa! Her scream filled the training ground. It was her right arm that had fallen down. It was same for most martial artists, but for the Lust clan, the right arm was like a treasure that could not be replaced. Aawaya! My arm! My arm! She screamed as she grabbed her arm on the ground, not thinking about stopping the bleeding. It was so sudden that everyone stared blankly before they returned to their senses. The instructor of the fifth group quickly ran up, grabbed the cut arm, and pressed on Wonryu's blood point. He then took off his clothes to wrap it around her arm to stop the bleeding. It had only been 3 weeks, but the instructor Wuchel glared at Yoan, who had injured his student so horribly, and looked away. Within the demonic academy where the strong took everything, Yoan had done nothing wrong. Whoa! Li Hemming was dumbfounded. He knew Right Guardian Submang's blade skill better than anyone else, and what Yoan did was the perfect copy of Submang himself, if not considering the experience and the internal energy. Drunkard, what have you done? He had created a masterpiece out of nowhere in just 2 weeks. Hemming thought Yoan would not have such luck at the beginning of the second test, but he was wrong. No, it's not Submang. He would have thought it was Submang if Yoan was just powerful in martial arts, but he had passed the second test so easily. He overpowered Wonryu in using formation tactics, and Hemming liked how aggressive Yoan was in dealing with his enemies. Maybe I should have taken him in as my apprentice before Submang did. The result came as regret for Hemming. But he was the chief of the academy, and Submang was already Yoan's teacher. Hemming got up and shouted, "Congratulations to the 8th group on their victory." Woaya! Members of the 8th group shouted with joy. I passed the second test. Phew! Chun Yoan also realized it by hearing his members shouting in joy. Go back down now. They returned to their position with joy. The victory of the 8th group didn't only give Chun Yoan happiness. Chun Yoan. He was hiding his skill. The peasant dares to defeat the Lust clan? I should pay attention to him. Chun Yoan's ability had now been revealed to everyone within the academy. Now, all the students from the high-ranked clans and princes began focusing on him. And as for Chun Jongsum, who hated Yoan as much as Mukium, he began planning ahead. The test began again as the next set of groups was ready. As they walked forward, Yoan felt a faint sensation of hostility and turned around. It was Ha Ilming who was glaring at him. Now you know? Yoan smiled and Ha Ilming scowled. You? Ha Ilming didn't think Yoan was the culprit until the test progressed further. After seeing Yoan attack Wonryu, he became certain that it was Yoan. He couldn't miss it as he had been attacked by Yoan the other night. Bastard! He couldn't do anything since they were in the middle of the test and he had to finish the test first. He. The 7th group was beyond excited to see half the members of the 6th group limping up onto the stage. This was going to be an easy victory. Attacking all the members? Whoever did it is very aggressive. Hemming also was intrigued to see such a thing. He had never seen an attack on this many students before. Begin. The 7th group began charging in with a charging formation. 6. It was the fishnet formation. The 7th group moved quickly to get into formation, but the 6th group did not move. Ha Ilming looked back at his members and seethed, "You all should thank me eternally." What did that mean? Ha Ilming then flashed his sword up and shouted, "Spear formation! Spear formation!" The 6th group members moved slowly to change formation, and the leader of the 7th group, Wu Juan, scoffed. "Ha! What a fool! Telling us what formation they're using?" And the formation was indeed the spear formation, which was weak against the fishnet formation as seen from the battle with the 8th group. What a noble sacrifice for your members, huh? Wu Juan thought as he and his group charged in. And when they were about to collide, goodbye. Wu Juan threw his shield out with the internal energy, but Ha Ilming threw his shield on the ground and grabbed on his sword with 2 hands. What? Ha Ilming's 2 arms then began to expand and he swung his sword from the bottom up. Damn it. Wu Juan brought down his shield to the bottom, but the shield was crushed and thrown up. Wu Juan looked up at his shield with shock, and Ha Ilming's powerful thrust came for his chest. Ugh! The sword penetrated Wu Juan's chest. Blood poured out from his mouth and he couldn't even speak. Ugh! Ha Ilming then focused the internal energy in his leg and shouted, "Push!" His group members then began putting the shield in front and started moving. Ha Ilming then used Wu Juan like a shield to push forward. Arg! The seventh group began to move back frantically. This result was completely different from all the other groups. Every student who was watching became dumbfounded and Hamming almost burst out in laughter. Ha ha ha! What kind of battle is this? This result was achieved through just one person's strength. Hamming was curious as to how Ha Ilming would pass the test with his wounded group, and this was beyond expectation. This year's academy is exciting. Hamming then got up and shouted, "Congratulations!" The sixth group shouted with joy. And as they were filled with joy, Ha Ilming glanced at Wu Juan before he turned to look at Yoan who was watching. His expression was saying this, "You're next." Yoan then realized that he had created an annoying enemy. The test went on with the other groups and they weren't that exciting. They were mostly normal formation battles. Countless students were wounded, but the only one who was killed was the seventh group leader, Wu Juan. Now, only 270 students were left and they moved on to the third stage. Chapter 30, Secret Books of the Academy Library, Part 2. All the cadets were dismissed from the training ground right after the second test. They were light-footed as they were the ones who had passed the test. Contrary to their expectations of hearing the details about the third test, Li Hamming, the Left Guardian and the Chief of the Demonic Academy, gave them a vacation. I applaud each and every one of you for passing the second test. You will be given 3 days of rest. Woa! All students rejoiced with a shout. The past 3 weeks had been busy for them. These 3 vacation days was for the students so they could take the time to recover, but it was also for instructors who needed rest. At the office on the first floor of the main building, there was a long meeting table with piles of documents which the instructors were shifting through. Someone came up to Li Hamming with a pile of organized documents. This is the evaluation and information regarding the failed cadets through the 5th group. Okay. Li Hamming received the documents and flipped through the pages as he shook his head. We have a lot of failed cadets. Are you talking about ones from the high-ranked clans? Yeah, they lost a good chance. Hamming continued looking through the documents. There were a lot of individuals who would have passed easily if it wasn't for the group testing. Even Chun Wanryu, who was one of the candidates to the throne, was included. Well, isn't that why we're here to do this work? Haha, yeah, that's true. The Demonic Academy was open for once every 10 years for 4 years only. The academy was strictly based on competition and gave no second chances to the failed students or talented individuals. This had been an issue with various families, and after through meetings, a reasonable amount of compensation was created. If we strictly base everything off the original rules of the academy, we wouldn't be doing this. Yeah, but you will be hearing all those complaints from the various clans. The compensation was to give a fair evaluation to the individuals and give them proper ranks and jobs that suited their skills. Failing the second test meant that no one would be a third-grade warrior, but that was deemed to be a waste of talented individuals. Therefore, it was changed. But why was it not announced earlier? That was because of the academy's talent-based system. If the students found out that they would be given a fair evaluation and title worth getting even if they failed, why would they risk their lives in the competition? The students who failed were missing out on the Black Dragon balls and access to the libraries, but the compensation was acceptable. Humph. By the way, they should be crawling over to the library by now. Hamming thought as he stretched for a break. And as he had guessed, the entrance to the library was crowded with over hundreds of students trying to get in. There are a lot of them. Most were here to go up to the second floor, and Chun Yoan was one of them. There were more at first, but half of them returned to the dorm to try another time. I'll be going to the first floor anyway. It was Yoan's first visit to the library. Most of the cadets had already used their time on the first floor, but Yoan had used that time to do a simulation with Nano. The choice to do so was also partly because of Subming's advice. Concentrate on learning my blade and breathing skills until you get to the second stage. That will increase your chances of moving on. Of course, teacher. But shouldn't I visit the library too? No. You have learned martial arts that would be on the 4th or 5th floor of the library, so don't waste your time delving into the ones on the first floor. He had a point. The butterfly blade dance and breathing of thousand martials were some of the best martial arts placed in the upper floors of the library. Chun Yo-won heeded the advice and focused on training his skills. When he got the 3-day vacation, he decided to visit the first and second floor of the library. 1 hour. That was the time limit given for the first floor. It was a very short amount of time to look through books, but it didn't matter to Yo-won. I'll scan as many as I can. His goal was to scan as many as he could within the time limit. The library was shaped like a tower, and each higher floor had less space. There were no windows and the only entrance was from the entrance on the first floor. I should give up on trying to sneak in. Chun Yo-won was shocked to see this. The library had one of the top security measures throughout the entire demonic cult castle. Hey, get in line. All the cadets lined up to write their names, and they each received 2 red candles. One of them had a line which showed how many hours they had spent. One of the candles was placed at the entrance, and the other was for cadet to carry around to keep track of time. What? 1.5 hours? Why is it so short? Some cadets were sighing at the entrance. It seemed like the time given for the second floor wasn't that long either. And then it was Chun Yo-won's turn to enter. Second floor? No, sir. First floor. What? You didn't visit the first floor yet? The instructor looked at Yo-won suspiciously and flipped through the book that recorded all the entrances to the first floor to check if Yo-won's name was there. No? He became curious as to why Yo-won had not visited the first floor yet, but it didn't matter to him, so he placed him on the last page of the booklet and said, "Write your name down there." Yo-won then received 2 candles. His candles were shorter than the candles that the other cadets going to the second floor received. You will be allowed 1 hour. If you go over the limit, you will be dragged out and punished. Make sure you check the time. Yes, sir, Yo-won answered casually and entered the library. A guard at the entrance gave him a box with a handle so that Yo-won could put the candle inside. This was to protect the books from accidental fire. As he walked in, he saw entire walls covered with bookshelves full of books. In addition, there were bookshelves all over the place. The many rows made it hard to count how many books there were. Whoa! Yo-won was astonished. He had never seen so many books in his life. He then quickly went over and took out the first book he saw. The cover of the book said, "Sword of 5 Marshals." I don't have time. The first floor had less important books, but it was better to know more than nothing. Since all the cadets were on the second floor, it was good for Yo-won to concentrate alone. Nano, I'll look through pages. Scan all of them. Yes, master. Yo-won then began flipping through the books. It only took him about a minute to go through the entire book. Scanning complete. He then continued looking through any book he could find and went on to read any book he could get his hands on. Nano kept telling him whenever the scan was complete. Once Yo-won was able to scan over 55 books, his pace became faster. He then moved toward the middle of the floor to look at the books in the middle. Huh? At the center of the library, there was a giant stone monument that glowed faintly in blue. Next to it was a middle-aged man with a long beard sitting on a chair. It seemed like he was the guard who watched over the first floor. What's with this stone? As he walked past it with a curious look, the middle-aged man looked at Yo-won's tag and spoke to him. This was left by our founding father, Chun-ma. Chun-ma? Yo-won became intrigued after knowing the secret behind this blue glowing stone. The man then got up from his seat and added, it was created with blue pearl stone. Blue pearl stone was stronger than any other type of stone as it was hard to even scratch without proper internal energy. There was also a poem written on the stone which looked like it had been engraved by a finger. Was this written by hand? Isn't it amazing? We can't do this with our swords, but Father Chun-ma did it with his finger. Even the most powerful warrior would say that it was impossible to leave such an engraving on blue pearl stone. Most are too busy looking at the books that they miss out on seeing this, but you seem to recognize your ancestors' greatest achievement. I almost missed it too. The man grinned at his words. Yes, but it is only natural. Who would care about a mere stone that was left by a person in ancient times when you are busy digging through books? He had guarded this place for 20 years, but he never saw anyone who took a good look at the stone. It was same for even those who had the blood of Chun. Well, I took too much of your time. Go on with your business. Thank you, sir. They only talked for less than a minute, so Yo-won smiled and walked past him toward the opposite side of the stone. He couldn't scan the books when the man was watching him, so he glanced back at the stone that his ancestor had supposedly put there. He then noticed that the stone had sharp scars. It seemed like it had been done to cover something up. What? Yo-won then walked closer to check the marks. It seemed like it had been made with sharp weapons. Nano, analyze these. Scanning the surface of the blue pearl stone, Nano began to analyze the surface through Yowan's eyes. Soon, Nano finished the analysis. Complete. It is a mark left by a sharp sword. A sword mark? Yowan was surprised. Who would have done such a thing on the stone that was left by the founding father of the cult? Nano then added some additional commentary. After further analysis, it seems that the marks were left by two different entities. Two people? Chapter 31, Secret Books of the Academy Library, Part 3. Nano, can you trace the sword marks through augmented reality in 3D mode? Chun Yowan, who now had gotten used to Nano's ability, ordered Nano with ease. Activating. White lines appeared in Yowan's vision and the augmented reality was shown. Nano's voice soon followed. The augmented reality had created a detailed 3D image of the swords and they created each mark. Oh. He didn't realize it when he just glossed over it, but the marks had various depths and angles on the stone. Was this done on purpose to hide something else? Maybe it erased someone's realization of the truth? Yowan felt a chill down his spine. If the person who left the poem in the stone was founding Father Chun Ma, then it was easy to guess who left the original sword marks. And if those were left by Chun Ma also, it was likely that the sword marks represented the trace of Chun Ma's founding of the truth. Nano, can you figure out who left which trace? Can you track the trace that was left first and then erase the rest of it? Understood. Yowan then saw countless sword marks being removed and was just left with a few sword marks. His eyes shook. It wasn't due to Nano's ability, but Yowan's surprise. It's a sword skill. Yowan then realized it wasn't just a regular trace. It was the trace of a sword skill created from various movements. There were certain patterns and movements to leaving the sword marks. I can see that it is from a sword skill, but this is not enough. Yowan didn't have the experience to analyze it properly, but Yowan had the Nano machine, or the technology of the future. Nano, can you retrace these marks and find out what moves the person made to create this? Positive. However, I require the density of the blue pearl stone to accurately portray the degree of strength required to leave the marks. You don't want me to destroy it, do you? Yowan frowned. He couldn't dare to damage the stone when even the strongest warrior couldn't do it. Besides, the guard was still sitting in front of the stone. I can analyze it if you place your palm on the surface. Yowan nodded and placed his hand on the stone. He then felt a tingling feeling going through his palm. Completed. Since the density of diamond is 10, blue pearl stone has a density of 7. It was astonishing that the stone had such density. It's that hard? Yowan then thought the one who left the marks on this stone must have been really powerful. He then came to one thought. Wait, who made the marks on top it then? Nano's voice then resounded in his ears, recreating movement that created the sword trace. A vague human avatar materialized itself in front of Yowan and began going through the motions. Many movements from the sword skill were unleashed instantaneously. It was extremely quick. Yowan thought the marks had been left through many movements since there were so many marks, but it was only the result of one combination. What? Yowan was shocked. He had only learned the dagger skill and butterfly blade dance, but he knew that the movement he witnessed just now was at an even higher level. It's impossible. Yowan thought of countering it with the butterfly blade dance, but he couldn't find a way to counter it effectively. It was that powerful. Nano. Is this from one formation? It is analyzed to be all interconnected. In the standard of martial arts that master knows of, yes. Yowan then felt his heart pounding and his legs shaking. The movement was perfect. He then swallowed his throat and asked, is there any other formation? After careful analysis, it was found to be only one formation. Yowan asked this because his butterfly blade dance was created with 24 basic movements. 3 movements were connected to each other to create a single formation. The last formation of the skill was the ultimate formation that consisted of 8 basic movements, and even Submang needed half a year to learn it. Yowan was able to learn it easily with the help from Nano, but even he felt the muscle strain from the last formation. 24 movements in one formation, it is simply perfect. What if there is more than one? Even if it was perfect with just one, there was no way a sword skill would be comprised of one formation. Yowan then thought there might be more than one of this stone. Nano, save the sword move that I just saw. Understood. He wanted to learn the movements, but he didn't have much time left. He didn't expect much from the library, but this was an amazing find. I almost missed the treasure because of the trace. Whoever it is, he did it intentionally. Well, it also only allowed me to get it, so maybe I should thank him. The sword skill would have been found if it wasn't for the sword marks. Nano spoke to him. After analyzing the sword mark left over the original, it was found to be created with 45 basic sword movements. What? Yoan almost gasped out loud in shock. He just thought it was left to hide the original mark, but it wasn't. And it was left over time. It wasn't made all at once? It was created by one person, but was left over time. That confused Yoan. All this was from a sword skill? Then why? Yoan then issued another order to Nano. He now had forgotten about scanning books completely. Nano, simulate the 45 sword skill movements. Understood. Activating. And just like before, a human-shaped figure appeared in front of him and quickly began going through the motions. What? As the sword skill was unleashed one by one, Yoan's expression turned into that of shock. From the 1st to the 10th, to the 20th, and to the 30th, Yoan couldn't hide his astonishment. It can't be, it's getting closer to perfection. It was already astounding by the 20th move, but by the time it passed the 40th attack, it was close to perfect. At the last 45th movement, Yoan's face was drenched with sweat. Completed. Huh? Yoan then came back to his senses. Oh, I'm sweating. He wiped the sweat off of his face. It was so shocking that he was now so thirsty from it. He then ordered, Nano, can you apply the 2 sword skills to the avatars and let them fight? Activating battle mode. 2 avatars appeared in front of him. They looked at each other and they each began using their different sword skills. The battle instantly ended, and the outcome was beyond belief. Yoan mumbled with disbelief, it's countered. The latter 45th sword skill easily countered the former that Yoan considered to be perfect and chopped the opponent avatar's neck. Chapter 32, Secret Books of the Academy Library, Part 4. Chun Yoan felt excited after discovering the sword skill behind the pearl stone. To think no one had noticed this. It was fortunate that he had come across such a finding. Yoan ordered, Nano, memorize these 45 skills. Understood. Yoan couldn't hide his smile. The middle-aged man then came over to him with a curious look. Huh? Were you still here? Oh, so you were looking at the backside. It's a mess, isn't it? The man smiled bitterly, isn't it shame? It was rumored that the back of the stone held a secret to Father Chun Ma's founding of the truth with the sword. Oh? Yoan looked at the man with an intrigued expression, but he shook his head as he felt the chaotic marks all over it. Whoever did this did a terrible thing. Maybe he wanted to take all of the glory for himself. Chun Yoan was shocked. If this man had been guarding the stone for a long time, he should have had ample time to look at these marks, but he just thought that it was an act of destroying the former record. Nobody has noticed it then. But there was one thing Yoan did not know about here. In order to find what sword skill was used, the one observing it had to have much more knowledge in martial arts. However, 2 sword skills left on this stone were even beyond Right Guardian Subming's level. Yoan then asked the man, are there more stones like this one in the library? It was an important question. If the stone only had one formation originally, he thought it was possible that more stones would be left with other formations. The man replied, I only stay on the 1st floor, but I heard these exist on every floor. It was what Yoan wanted to hear. He quietly nodded. Oh, it's almost over. Time was now running out, but he didn't care. He had gotten something better than scanning through books. Oh, are you almost done here? Yeah. Yoan smiled and the man pointed to a direction in the library. Go check on the origins section. There aren't that many martial arts books that are useful here, but those books might help you. Oh, it's my apology for taking your time. He then patted Yoan's shoulder and returned to his seat. Yoan then bowed to the man and went to the shelves. Oh, the books here had the basics of all martial arts and the origins. What caught Yoan's eye was the book called Origin of Internal Energy. Nano, scan the book. Yoan then began skimming through the book and realized that the information it contained seemed useful. It was a book that explained the basis of internal energy that might help Nano analyze and help with the breathing skill. Yoan then used all his remaining time to scan the books on the shelf. He didn't realize it now, but this would later help him in creating his own martial arts. Humph. You are just in time. The instructor at the entrance pursed his lips. Yoan had barely made it out in time. You can go now. The instructor said he could leave, but Yoan wasn't finished yet. He wanted to go to the 2nd floor to check on something right away. I want to go to the 2nd floor too. What? The instructor became confused. Most of the students would be busy returning to their rooms so they could write down what they memorized, but Yowan's decision to go to the second floor didn't make sense. However, the instructor just thought that maybe Yowan didn't consider the first floor books to be that important. Write your name down. Yes, sir. Yowan was then allowed to enter. There was a staircase near the entrance right before the first floor. The guard standing at the stairway checked Yowan's candle and allowed him to go upstairs. The second floor was smaller than the first. Inside, a countless number of cadets were reading and memorizing the books. Oh, they're still here. Most of the cadets here had a bit of left time as they entered the floor around the same time as Yowan. These books did not help much to those from powerful clans, but it was a great help for those from low-ranked clans, and they were memorizing as fast as they could. Oh. Yowan then spotted an unexpected person. It was Chun Yuchan from the Blade clan. Unlike the other candidates who underestimated the books on these floors, he was here looking through various Blade books. Maybe I should watch out for him. People who put in more effort into things that looked pointless were more dangerous to him. Yowan then walked silently to the center of the floor. There it is. There was the blue pearl stone standing proudly in the center. Unlike the guard on the first floor, the guard here was walking around the stone, checking to see if the students were copying the books here. Yowan then walked to the back of the stone. I knew it. He almost gasped in astonishment. The stone was covered in sword marks too. Yowan called out to Nano again. Nano, scan those marks and analyze it. Understood. Nano began to scan the traces. Found marks left by same entities from the first floor. One entity left one formation created with 24 movements. Another entity left a total of 56 formations over time. Nano was much quicker in scanning it since it had prior information. It now has more formations here. It seems that the person who covered the original marks had gone on with further training. Yowan wanted to see how the 56 formations were able to counter the original formations, but he could only do it later since there were too many people around. Nano, scan and save the sword movements and formations. Understood. I got 4 more formations then, heh. Yowan then glanced over at the candle. It hadn't even melted yet, so he skipped watching the simulations. So, I still have an hour and a half left. I guess the books here are better than the ones on the first floor? Yowan then began going through the books to scan them. Nano, scan it. Yes, master. Yowan then began walking through the shelves. As Yowan began scanning at a fast speed, the cadets were drawn to his actions. The continuous sound of Yowan flipping the pages distracted from concentrating. They were already distracted by the guards walking around, but this was worse. Ugh, what is he doing? Ugh, hi. It was especially irritating as Yowan was just skimming through those books. However, he wasn't interfering with their reading directly, so they couldn't raise complaints either. Ugh, I can't let him distract me. Let's focus. As Yowan passed through, all the cadets screamed internally.